Back. Wow. Okay, cool. So exciting. All right. So we were sending to Google. So let's go back to localhost 3000, and we're going to do a post request. And in the body, let's go back to form encoded. We'll say ID 6, name, Fido, age 5, fave food, cookies, hot chocolate. Okay. So what happens if we send that? Uh-oh, we get an error, not found, because I didn't go to /puppies. Uh-oh.
And I think your redirect, the route you're sending to that doesn't exist anymore. Just change that to puppy.
Nice. Good catch. Hey, there we go. We got all the puppies. There's Fido. What happens if we do it again? Oh, look, there's now 2 Fidos.
Postgres world, you get yelled at.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Do you mind just jumping back? Like, what exactly is happening in the lines? Let's see, I think it's I can't really see 18, 19. Like the rec.body. I mean, I'm sure it behooves me to like look at the doc and see what dot body.
Yeah.
Is, but
So .body, what kind of requests can have a body to them? You guys know? Post? Put? I believe delete as well can have a body. It's based. I believe it's just GET requests really that can't have bodies, right? So, I mean, you could do a finder create sort of like you could do like something with an ORM with a delete route that I don't. Yeah, like pass some. I don't. Anyway, so the body is basically like in Postman here. It's this. Where is the actual? This is the response. Wait, how do I? Like, where do I get to the body again? Not the response. Yeah, that's so weird. Here, maybe if I just save. Like load the. Ugh. All right. Well. Oh, I just scroll up. Okay, there we go. Okay, so these things that I'm sending here, these key value pairs, are basically getting built into an object by the body parser middleware here. So body parser, what body parser does is it looks for an HTTP request body, and it turns that into a JavaScript object, which it sets as the .body property on the request. So it's just making the raw data that's coming in from the HTTP request, and it's putting it as a property of the request object itself in Express. So what we're doing here is we're taking that whole request body, which is just like the information about the puppy, and we're pushing that whole object onto our puppies array here. Yeah, this is like our database.
Is it one of those things like since the post request, like the new puppy, which we've set to their puppy rec.body, like whatever I don't know the user includes, like whatever information you
yeah, whatever is sent. So from Postman, I mean you could make like a front end website that would send a new puppy based on a form or anything like that. But in this case, I'm sending just a raw request with this information about the puppy, which then gets added on to our puppies array and then sent back. And the reason it's getting sent back is because we're redirecting here to our /puppies route, which then gets all of the puppies in that array and sends them back. So I think this redirect may be a little bit like muddying the waters a little bit. So let's just res dot send the puppy again. Let's send the puppy they created back to them. So then if we do that and go to Postman, whoa, do I just have a, sorry, encoded. So if we send that request now, we just get the newly created puppy back.
Okay, so a post can have like a response too. Somebody can post and trigger a response as part of all of the
Yeah.
things.
The question is whether a post can have a response. So any HTTP request has one response. That's like always the rule with HTTP, one request, one response. So no matter what kind of request it is, the server should send back a response. Most servers, if you forget to send back a response, have some sort of like timeout built into them where like after a certain point, if you don't send a response, they'll either send a 500 internal server error or like a 404 not found or something like that, depending on how they're set up internally. Yeah. Express does some version of that somewhere. I can't remember, but yes, question.
In all the app methods, you're passing next in the parameter, but are you just doing that by default, even though you're not necessarily nexting?
Yeah, Express just, it's good practice to do it because you may then need it. And next is just the function that's going to go on. Especially if you were writing middleware where you wanted to do something maybe to the request, but you didn't want to actually send a response yet. So for instance, like, say if you wanted to post a puppy here or something like that. Say you wanted to add another property onto the onto the request object. You want to just add some extra information for some reason. Then you could next off of this, and Express would then keep looking for any route that it might match. So say you wanted to do this, not actually send the puppy there, and you wanted to write a route that app.use, and it just was at everything. Then you could send something at the end, and if we make a postman request, we're always going to then hit that this is my default route at the end. But if for some reason you wanted to be like, make like rec.puppy equals puppy, then you could also send, I don't actually know if res.send does that. You could send like the puppy that you added to the request body. It's all like how you want to set up your API and what's useful. I'm going to go ahead and kind of, actually, I'll leave this in because that'll be the route that we hit at the end if we don't hit anything else. But we'll set this puppy down here. And if you're sending a request, you do not want to next afterwards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's either next or a request or a response dot send. Cool. Was there a question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious about like the flow of steps to this. Like whenever a request is made, it just like starts at the top of app.js again and like looks for that route.
Yeah.
For the first route that it matches. But then if we have things in a separate like router file, first it goes through the app.js and then it goes into the router, or it seems like there's a little to think about there.
Yeah, so the question was sort of like, how does Express, sorry, I'm just saying that for my, how does Express like go through every time a request comes in? And the answer is the request, Express goes through every single route to see if it matches every time. So that is to say, if you had a router mounted, say, at /kittens, and then you had all your kittens routes inside. If it doesn't match kittens, it's not going to go into that middleware router and then match everything else. But it's essentially a very long nested queue. So you would have like, some like app.use, and then maybe you have an app.use at a path. And that path then is essentially its own sort of like nested queue. Then once it finishes with that nested queue, it'll keep moving on to app.use or app.use another path. So it's a big nested queue essentially. It's like basically expresses an array, a nested array. So it's going to go through and try to match against any of those things that it can. There's a couple things. It is all wrapped in like a big try catch. And at some point, basically, if there's an error, it's going to like res.status 500 dot send error, something like that. If one of your routes throws an error that you don't catch yourself, all of Express is kind of wrapped in this big try catch, so the server doesn't crash, but that you end up sending back to the client that there was an internal server error, which is 500.
So we can just like dot catch basically anywhere in this file. Like normally we pair our dot catch with a try, but now we're just always inside this.
You're always so Express basically wraps all of your routes in this big try catch thing. So you can also write your own error handling. So Express has another way of doing that, which is if if one of these app.uses, maybe it matches everything, has a callback function with 4 arguments, that is your error handling catch at the end of your own route. So you can write your own custom error catching middleware as well. Yeah. Does that answer your question about kind of how Express goes through? There's a great article, I don't know if the instructor slapped it around, about Netflix and their problems with Express, because they just kind of didn't understand how it was actually working under the hood. Let me see if I can find it and just add it to this README here. Yes. So basically, they didn't realize how Express was working, and so they were writing these routes in like not the best patterned way, and so they would get these like crazy spikes where basically like this is like the route like trying to hit all these nested things, and so they were getting these like insane they were just spending like all this time. Anyway, you should read this article. It's pretty interesting about like somebody who maybe didn't use the right pattern when writing their Express routes. Okay, cool. So where were we? Okay, so we wanted to tackle query strings, right? Or do we want to do params first or queries first? Both? Okay. Okay, here we go. So
When there's params, I think it's more straightforward because it's just colon and then the parameter.
yeah.
But if there's also a query, then I don't know how to handle it other than a bunch of like if there's a query and it becomes a really big block.
So the question is if you've got params and queries at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's yeah, we can handle that. Okay, so we're gonna let's first start out with just dealing with the param, and let's grab the puppy where this ID matches. Does that sound good? Or should we just maybe instead of using IDs, actually having an ID property in here, let's just for time's sake, let's treat the ID as the array index. Does that sound good? Just in our data structure that we're using here. Okay, so what would we do to get that a puppy at that array index? Okay, so we could do that. We could say ID equals, how do we get it? Yeah, so that's going to give us whatever matches this rect.params here. Cool. And then what? Whoa. So all sorts of things in the web API. Okay. Yeah, let's try it out. Oh. That's interesting. Did I misspell that? Oh. Yeah, what happened there? Anybody tell me? You want to see the postman route again? Request again?
Oh, so you're making a post.
Yeah, it's a post request. Yeah, so let's see what happens when we get puppy 1. There we go. Puppy 1 is named puppy 2. Great, cool. All right, so we got that. That's good. Now, so the question was about query, right? So what might we want to do with a query string on getting a puppy by ID? Let's say, how about, well, we want a route where we can get a puppy by ID, but if there's a query string, we could just get that property of the puppy. So we could say puppies/1 query fave food, or something like that. Or query fave food equals whatever. Does that make sense? So how do we access the queries? So let's say like var query equals rec dot query. Yeah, that's a question, right? It's like how do we get that stuff? Why don't we, before we do anything else, let's just like look at what that object actually looks like, right? Okay, so let's go back to Postman and let's send a query, which I think we can just do with the we just not that. What is it? Query. Yeah, right. Okay. We say fave food equals true or something like that. Cool. So it's just an object with those key value pairs in it. What is it? What happens if we just send fave food? That's an empty string. So we could just do it that way, which is fine. It's like maybe a little bit funky, but let's say we wanted to get like the fave food and the age. We just get an object that has those keys, but an empty string. So we could kind of design this API however we want to, but we've got this query object with these keys, which are the things that we're looking for. So how would we like go through the puppy and match things against the queries that we're sending? We're trying to filter the puppy object that's getting returned. We're trying to filter it according to what queries are there if the user sends a query. So we want a route that if the user just wants one puppy, they just hit that route. But if they want a particular thing about that puppy, they can put it in the query string and just get that thing returned. Or things. Let's maybe just start with having it be one thing. Like we're going to assume, for the sake of this right now, that the user's only ever going to send one query. That doesn't actually matter that much, but it has to be programmatic, right? We want the user to be able to request the fave food or the age and be able to deal with that. Does anybody want to guide me through it, or should I just start stabbing in the dark?
So we'll do like puppies.filter.
Okay. Well, we're already getting the puppy, right? Because we have the ID as a param. Because we don't want to get all the puppies' fave foods. We just want to get this puppy's fave food, right? Because we're on a route to get a single puppy. So we can say var puppy equals puppies at ID, right? So we've got the puppy. Now, how do we like filter that object to only get the response that we want? Say that again?
In this, the way we've got it set up, could we just say puppy.query and that would return the value of the query that we requested?
Puppy.query. Oh, I see what you're saying. So puppy like this? Puppy query?
Yeah.
Let's see. Because this puppy, you're saying this query here is an object with those things.
Yeah, and because you set puppy to equal puppy.
A single puppy object.
Yeah, at that param. So
Mhm.
you send a GET request with a param, it'll go to just that object. And then if you say, hey, look in that object and go to like dot query, you should go to like the query key, the value at the query key inside of that object.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So we may run into an issue here, but let's try it out. We did. Okay, so this sent back undefined. And that's because the query is an object. So you're trying to access the whole object. So what we can do here, I'm just going to kind of jump ahead a little bit. I'm going to say, let's say object.keys of rec.of query. So we can get all the query keys, and let's return an array. So let's say like if they ask for two, like name and fave food, we'll send both of them back. So let's map over that, and that's going to be a key. And oh, sorry, no ES6. And inside that key, we're going to return puppy key. So if they ask for fave food, we'll get fave food back, and then we can just say, let's say responses. Let's save that there. Okay. So now let's see what happens if we ask for fave food. We get chow. And we could actually, instead of making this, we could actually build an object too. So actually responses equals, maybe we should do that so we actually know what we're talking about. And we don't return puppies.keys. It's actually just a for each. Stop me if I'm going too fast. I may be. I'm sorry. So we say responses key equals puppy key. And then we're just copying information from the puppy onto the response, but selectively according to the query. So then let's see what that looks like. I think you have to do something similar like to this in your checkpoint, right? Maybe not exactly the same. Cool. So we get the fave food is chow on that puppy. What if we want the age? The age of 4. So what if we want name and fave food and something? So because it doesn't exist, we're not getting anything back, which is cool. Does that part make sense? Yes.
So I'm wondering about the query in general because I see like a few things happening. Like,
Yeah.
One, I see like a post request, which I kind of feel like, I don't know.
We're not doing a post request in the query at all.
Okay, well I see it's before that, so I know it's like different, but
Yeah.
I think I'm just confused on like the breakdown of like what's happening because like I think of like a post is kind of like something in which you would input a param, as would be
Right.
a query, which is above that, and then of course we have like in the argument for the .get we have the param, which is the ID. So it seems like I don't know, a lot of different things are going on for like specifying. And
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what's happening.
So the question was about sort of like how to know how to specify what you want in which kind of route, that sort of thing.
I think my question is, what is the query?
Okay, so the query, I mean, the query is just this stuff. Anything that goes after a question mark in a URI is a query. And so what Express does is it takes this stuff here, basically only here, because it's just, it knows what port and server it's listening on. So it takes everything after the port and server up until the string, up until a question mark, and it's like, this is the route that I'm going to try to match on.
Okay.
And so that's what's matching here. It's matching here because it's matching a /puppies/ whatever, which we're calling ID in this case. The query then is all that stuff that happens after the question mark. And what Express does is it takes all these things in here, separated by the ampersand, and it turns them into keys on a .query object.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, it's great. Express is taking care of a lot of the parsing and stuff like that that we otherwise would have to do. So one sec. So we would never want to say that we're going to match against like fave food equals something, right? Because Express doesn't consider the query to be part of the path because it's not. A URI is made up of multiple parts, made up of a path and a query string and maybe some other things. There might be a redirect URL in there or something like that. So there's all sorts of stuff, but Express is really just looking for the path that you're looking on. It's matching against that, and then it's kind of doing other stuff with the body and with things like that. Does that make sense? Okay, question.
Wait, so right now, what would be the output if you don't have any query?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Because we haven't really dealt with that. Empty object, right? So how do we take care of that? Yeah, are we still logging rec.query? Let's do that really quick. Let's see what rec.query is if there's no query. It's an empty object. So how do we check? Yeah,
So that's like unfortunately truthy.
it is truthy, right?
So it's
How?
not equal to other empty objects.
Yeah. How can we check whether an object is empty? Let's see. Let's check about the length. What happens there? Undefined. Yeah, it would be. Unless we got some other random object that like somehow wasn't thing that somehow had a dot length process. Property, what was that?
Can you do object.keys query dot length?
Yeah, so we could do object.keys because if an object has no keys, we can assume that it's empty. And so we can say here this should now log zero. So what we could say is we could say var is empty query equals this, because it's either going to be falsy if it's 0 or it's going to be truthy if it's anything but 0. And then we can say if is empty query, we can res.send puppy, else we could do this stuff. And there's multiple ways you could structure that, but this is one way that works just fine, right? So if there's no query, we just send the whole puppy back. And if there is a query, we send back what we want of that puppy. So here we go. Uh-oh. Did we do something wrong? Oh, if not is empty it's empty query, right? There we go. Now we get the whole puppy. Otherwise, we can get the fave food of the puppy. Does that make sense? Yes.
So just to clarify conceptually here, when you basically don't set up routes to include the queries, you set up routes to consider parameters and then deal with queries inside of the parameters.
Yeah, so the question was about parameters versus queries and routes. Yes, you never want to consider queries as part of your route because the queries are something you could handle or not handle inside a route. And probably most of your routes are not going to deal with queries. Queries are really about sort of either something like posting a form, in which case you could kind of take all those queries, that whole query object, and kind of like save it somewhere or do something to parse it. But by and large, most of your routes are not going to have query strings, but it's a nice way of doing something else once you've hit a route. Because otherwise, say you have, say you want to send a couple different pieces of information with a request. Like, say what you wanted to do is you wanted to make a server that would send files back to a person, but like you wanted to send a directory and like a file extension, and you wanted to get all those files, right? It wouldn't be great practice to say that you're looking for like slash files or slash, you're looking for slash file path and then slash file extension, because it's just like kind of a weird pattern to deal with that. So what you could do is you could make a sort of like get files path, and then you could have query strings that would be like path equals da 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 and extension equals whatever you want to do. So the idea is that like the queries can be really good for kind of more dynamically dealing with the sort of thing you're going to have to do with an API request. But you would want your paths to do things like get user ID 1, get user ID, or like get users /ID /reviews /ID. So you could get like a particular ID from a particular user or something like that. Yes, question.
So is it accurate? So I think about like params and query strings as the way of getting around the like get requests that don't have a body, so they can't convey any information. So like with a post request, would you usually just send the data with the body and not put it in a query string or params?
The question was like thinking of sort of the params and the queries as sort of a way of getting around the fact that you don't have a body on a get request, and that is, there is definitely something to that. Yeah, because it's a way of specifying something more about a GET request without having to sort of set up everything. And yeah, that's not a bad sort of way of conceptualizing of it. With a POST request, you still might want to do something that, but usually a POST request you're kind of sending to a more generic thing. With a PUT request, it might be a little bit different, because with a PUT request you might say like, let's just write one real quick. So let's put. But by the way, I'm happy to keep going on this. I know that you all are also doing FQL CS Saturday, so like I will not be offended if you just want to go back and keep working on that. But if you've got more questions, I'm totally happy to kind of keep going on this, as long as probably no more than till 3 o'clock. But okay, so let's do a put request, and that's going to be /puppies.id, and this is going to be, what is put for?
Updating.
Yeah, updating. So what we're going to do here is this put request. We're going to want to have a particular ID of puppy that we want to update. We don't want to just like randomly update puppies, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to get that puppy. I'm just going to shorthand it. I'm not going to make a separate ID. So we've got the puppy, and we're going to update the puppy. Let's say that our put request, the body is going to be an object, right? So I'm going to do something a little bit ES6y here, and I'm going to say object.assign, which is going to copy, or sorry, who knows what object.assign does? Yes.
So I think it takes multiple objects as parameters, and it copies any property found on the later parameters to the ones that come before it. So in this case, we only need 2, but we would, I guess, want to copy from rec.body onto like our puppy object.
Yeah, so it takes a series of objects, and it successively copies the key value pairs of the later objects onto the previous ones. So you can do as many objects as you want, and it overwrites if it needs to overwrite, and it doesn't overwrite if it doesn't need to overwrite. One thing about it, it only goes one level down. So if you're copying things over, you're still referencing the initial object that was pointed to by a key. It doesn't do a deep clone on like a big nested object. Just if you're thinking about functional programming today while you're doing FQL. So we're going to copy onto puppy. We're going to copy over the rec.body, which is going to be a key value pairs with all of our updates. And then let's just res.send. We don't need to save the result of this, right? Because it's a mutating function. It's actually mutating the puppy object itself. So then we can res.send puppy, and let's make some changes to these puppies. So let's get puppy 0. Let's just see what's up with puppy 0 again. Puppy 0's name is puppy 1. That's like kind of sad. So let's do a put request, and let's say that the name is going to be Omri.
Still sad.
Uh-oh, that didn't work, did it? It should have worked, I thought. Sending the puppy. Let's log the rec.body. Let's just make sure I'm not crazy. I thought it did. Yeah. Puppy 0. Trans.id. Oh, that's interesting. The body is empty. Oh, because I'm doing form data. I want the form encoded, right? There we go. Now we have an Omri puppy. So in that case, right, you've got a little bit more specific thing. You've got a param, but you've also got a body that you want to copy onto another object. You'll see this pattern a ton when you start working with Sequelize more, where you're kind of trying to go to somewhere specific, but you're updating just based on a whole bunch of key value pairs that you send in to something. Okay, let's not delete puppies because we don't want to get rid of them. I'm trying to think of any other express. Let's look back at this README. Any other questions, big questions? Static middleware. Yeah, who wants to know about static middleware? Yeah. Who can tell me about static middleware? Yes.
Well, as far as I remember, it's just using like some sort of like file on our local like directory or whatever
Yeah.
So you don't need to have a path for like all the CS files,
Right.
the style sheets.
Yeah.
You have JavaScript files, all that. It loads from a public folder.
Yeah. So it's basically, we want to often serve up static files like HTML, CSS, images, all that kind of stuff. We don't want to have to make separate routes to for / my cool image that's going to res.send my cool image, right? We want to just be able to say serve up this whole folder and just deal with it express. I don't have to worry about it. So in this case, app.use is going to serve up this whole public folder. And I think I have that syntax right. Let's see. Let's cool puppy.
You have to add like directory name because it's absolute.
Oh yeah, you're right. So let's do. Let's. So and we're going to path.join. Right. That sounds good to me. And what's that?
What is required path?
Path is part of the built-in. It's a built-in node module. It's basically just nice things for joining together paths. Yeah, just for joining file paths in a nice way, so you don't have to do dir name plus this plus that kind of thing. So you don't have to do your own string concatenation. There's other stuff in path as well that's not .join. There's path.resolve, which is nice because it's a way of sort of doing a sort of try-catch around some of your path name stuff. I forget exactly how it works now, but well, let's find a cool puppy image. This is a cool puppy. Let's save it. Let's put it here in public. Save as large. Great, that's easy. And so then we've got, okay. So I think then we should be able to just do, what kind of file was that again? JPEG. Wow, okay, sorry. /public / large.jpg. Oh no. Thank you. What am I not doing right here? There we go. Yeah, that's right, because it's mounting at public itself. So, so express.static is a way of just serving up those files, so I didn't have to write. I could put small in there as well. Does that make sense?
So okay, is it kind of like I don't know, is it similar to exporting, but instead of with an individual file, it's the folder?
Okay, is it similar to exporting an individual file but folder? It's kind of like that in that it's making these things accessible. The idea is that you're running a server, you don't want to have to put inside your HTML file a tag that's going to have to make a GET request to get your CSS file, for instance, like that. Because when you put a link tag in your HTML to get your CSS, it's making a GET request. So you need your server to be oh, when somebody asks for CSS files, one of the middlewares that I'm going to do is I'm going to look in here for anything that matches that file name, and I'm going to just send it back, right? I'm just going to send anything in the public folder. If somebody gets the right folder file name there, path and file name, I'm going to send it back to them. If you wrote another script tag or something and you saved it in public, it could just send back whatever's in that JavaScript file or something like that. So it's basically and whenever you put an image tag in HTML, that's also making a GET request for an image. So say you made an HTML file and you wanted to include large.jpg in there, you could just say, image source equals large.jpg, and because then it'll make a request back to your server for that image file and serve it up. So it's just a way but you don't have to ever alter that image, right? So it's a static file. You're never the server is never doing anything when you ask for an image. It's just sending the image back. So it's just for dealing with files like that. You don't have to go to a database and get anything, right? You're just serving up a file itself from the server's file system. Yeah.
Since we're really gonna worry about templating stuff in the future? I guess it's not much of a thing.
That's a good question. Yeah, since we're not dealing with server rendering, but you know, you're going to want to serve your CSS files when you're working in React. You might want to serve node modules, right? You could say you're using Bootstrap. You could use a CDN and bring Bootstrap from those servers, or you could install Bootstrap. I forget, have you had to do that yet on a project? Maybe that's Twitter, or maybe that's Trip Planner that you do that for. You can install Bootstrap as a node module, and then express.static serve up your node module's Bootstrap folder. And so it can get the CSS and the JavaScript of Bootstrap. And then it's nice because it's just like whenever you npm install, you've just got it all right there, and you don't have to worry about like the CDN link changing sometime or something like that. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look. What else did we not cover? We feel like we dealt with that one. How do you guys feel about this one? Multiple params in the URI. I guess we didn't really talk about that, did we?
Sorry, really quick.
Yes.
Going to the previous question, dealing with queries and how to route them. So when I look at everything, I feel like everything we've done is like just routing stuff. So when I hear the word like router, you know, like it seems like it's everything we just did. But like, do we need to like require a router or like set up a router?
That's a good question. Yeah. So with router, well, so queries are just those things after question mark. So queries don't actually have anything to do with your routes. Queries are only dealt with after a route has been matched, essentially. Like they're put as a rec.query, but you're never going to do anything with them unless you actually hit a route, which is that stuff that happens before the question mark in the URI. But the question I think is about express router, right?
Sure.
Express.router and using that. So what all that express.router does basically is it lets you mount some more middleware like here. So let's actually do this real quick. Let's leave our puppies here for now, and let's make a puppies router real quick. Let's see how fast we can do this. So equals require express dot router and then invoked, right? Does that seem reasonable? Seems, yeah, you can, because you're just chaining functions, right? Like express gives you an instance of express, right, which just has this dot router thing, and when you invoke it, it returns a router. So I don't want to get too fancy, but so we can do router.u. So then here we go. We're gonna module.exports equals router. Now inside our app, what we can do is we can say app. Let's var puppies router equals require / puppies router, right? So now what we can say is we can do app.use, or who wants to tell me what we can do to use that router? So we're going to mount it. Let's mount it at /puppies, and then we're going to use puppies router for any route that matches puppies. Then what we can do is we take all of these puppies things that we're doing, we can copy them into our puppies router, change all these apps to router. We also need to bring in puppies, and we actually don't need puppies here anymore at all, right? Because we're not actually referencing our puppies object anymore. So let's move our puppies array into here as well. Now we've got our puppies, and now instead of mounting there, because app is mounting this middleware at /puppies, we're actually now, once we're in this router, we're at localhost 3000 /puppies. So we can get rid of the puppies at the beginning of all of these routes. Well, get rid of the puppies at all these routes, and now let's try making a couple requests. There we go. We can get all puppies. We can get one puppy. And if we really want to, we could make a new puppy. I'm not going to demonstrate because I think I've proved the concept. Does that sound right? Now, but if, for instance, right, if we don't match the puppies, but we try something that doesn't exist, we're going to hit that default route still at the end because Express is going to get here and it's going to be like, I don't match this puppies route at all, so I'm not even going to go into the puppies router. I'm going to go straight here to this catch-all star, which matches any route. Does that make sense?
So why would you use it then? I mean, I kind of see what's happening.
Why would I use router?
Yeah, why wouldn't you just keep it the way it was?
Well, say I want a server that serves up puppies, kittens, rabbits, and monkeys. But I don't want to waste, but like, this is a super high traffic server because billions of people want the puppies and stuff, you know, so like, I don't want to waste the time of having to go through every single puppies route if I know I'm going to hit a kitten, right? So it's going to know it doesn't match anything right there. It's not even going to enter the puppies router when somebody looks for a kitten. But if it matches, app.use will match the beginning part of that string, right, from where it's mounted. So even if it's like /kittens/1/something/something, it knows it's going to be somewhere in that kittens router, so it's going to enter the kittens router.
Because there are like a million paths.
Yeah, so say I've got a super complicated server or API, which, you know, like, say, I don't know, I'm like operating in Amazon Web Services, like, and I like have a million requests coming in per second or something like that. So it's a way of not having it match quite so many things because those are nested queues then sort of within Express's middleware. Yeah. Yes?
Can we very quickly just touch on the multiple params question?
Multiple params, yeah. So multiple params, and this comes a little bit back to sort of like RESTful architecture. So let's say we wanted to get a puppy by ID. Like let's say puppies had, I don't want to totally make like another data structure right now. So this is maybe going to be a little bit mocked up, right? So let's say we're going to do a router.get by ID, but we're going to do like router.get. We will get the ID of the puppy, and then we'll get like maybe a puppy has like multiple places it likes to go, right? But no, maybe a puppy has lots of, so this is a puppy e-commerce site, right? So our puppies have lots of orders, but we actually want to get like a particular order ID for that puppy. So maybe like this would be our route for getting all the orders that puppy had made, but maybe we want to just get a certain ID. Then we could call this like order ID. And then we could write our function. And basically what we would do is like puppies.find by, so like functions that I definitely have written. So it's going to like puppy.find by ID, and that's going to return a promise. Wow. And then we got a puppy, and oh god, I'm sorry, I'm like getting all ES6. And then with that puppy, let's say we're going to like return puppy.get all orders where, let's say we're in Sequelize now. Order ID matches rec.params.order ID. And then we want to like res.send that whole thing, right? Then we would just get like that single order from the puppy. So it's a way of like when you've got multiple things that you need to match together, for instance, in like a database query or something like that. But yes?
Yeah. Are you intentionally within, you could go up a little bit. I think you're within the ID get request still. Is that?
Am I? Nope, it's definitely not. Good catch, thank you. Uh-oh. Okay, I can't see this on my screen anymore. So, so this is like dummy route if we had something like Sequelize hooked up. And this is going to be find by ID, and that's going to be rec.params.id, right? So we've got, well, and this is also out of order. So we're gonna match first against this ID, and then we're going to like find it by ID, and then we're gonna like take the puppy that's returned from that and like find something specific. So it's really useful for more for like querying some database, or maybe you actually